She said my name like she was testing it, soft, deliberate, as if tasting it before letting it go. And just like that, the air between us changed. I'd been to that house a dozen times. It always smelled faintly of jasmine and brewed coffee, a scent that clung to the curtains and to her. But that afternoon, it felt different, quieter somehow, the kind of silence that hums with something unspoken. She stood by the window, sunlight cutting across her hair, and turned slightly when she noticed me watching. There was nothing dramatic about it, no slow motion, no soundtrack. Just her eyes meeting mine for a fraction too long, and me forgetting what I came here to say. "Your friend's upstairs," she said, smiling politely. I nodded. "Right. Yeah, I know." But I didn't move. She noticed that too. Her smile didn't fade, but it changed, softened, like she understood something I didn't have the words for. She was in her 40s, I think, though the number felt irrelevant. There was a kind of grace in how she carried herself, unhurried, every gesture exact. The kind that comes from knowing who you are, and knowing that other people notice. I tried to look away. I really did. But she crossed the room to place her cup in the sink, and when she passed behind me, her hand brushed my shoulder. Light, maybe accidental, maybe not. The contact lasted less than a second, but it left the kind of warmth that stays long after it should have faded. "You've grown taller," she said, her voice calm, teasing. "Or maybe I've gotten smaller." "You're exactly the same," I replied before I could stop myself. That made her laugh, a quiet, disbelieving laugh that filled the space between us. "Flattery doesn't suit you," she murmured, turning back toward the counter. Maybe not. But it was true. She looked like someone time had touched carefully. Her hair was tied up loosely, a few strands falling near her neck. She wore no jewelry except for a thin silver ring that caught the light when she reached for a towel. I noticed everything, the small things you only see when you're trying not to look. When she spoke again, her tone had changed, softer, thoughtful. "You're in your final year now, aren't you? Time goes faster than it should." I nodded, pretending to examine the floor tiles. "Feels like it." There was another pause, not uncomfortable, just full. She leaned against the counter, crossing her arms loosely. "You remind me of someone I used to know," she said. "He had the same way of thinking before speaking." I smiled faintly. "Was he terrible at conversations too?" Her lips curved. "No. He just listened too carefully." That silence came again, the kind that draws you closer without a single step. She looked at me then, really looked, and the air shifted once more. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, the sound of her breath when she exhaled a little too slowly. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but the sound of footsteps came from upstairs. Her son. My friend. She straightened slightly, eyes darting toward the ceiling, and for a split second, her hand reached for the counter like she needed something to hold. Then she glanced at me, a look that lasted half a heartbeat too long, full of something unspoken and dangerous. "Go on," she said quietly. "He's waiting." But the way she said it, the way my name lingered in her mouth before the words left, made me wonder if she meant for me to stay. And for a moment I almost did doubt. I told myself it was just curiosity, that I was only noticing her because I'd never really looked before. But that wasn't true. Every time I went over to see my friend, I found myself listening for her voice before I even knocked. Sometimes she was in the kitchen, humming to music too quiet to recognize. Sometimes in the garden, sleeves rolled up, sunlight tangled in her hair. Always calm. Always somewhere between here and somewhere else. That day, she opened the door herself. "He's not home yet," she said. "He mentioned he'd be late." I almost left. I should have. But she stepped aside, and somehow I found myself inside again, the same faint jasmine in the air, the same quiet house. "Tea?" she asked. I nodded. She moved easily through the kitchen, her movements familiar but unstudied, like she'd done this 1,000 times. Only this time, I was paying attention. Her hand brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, Her thumb traced the rim of the cup before she poured the water. I didn't realize I was staring until she turned and met my eyes. "What?" she asked, half smiling. "Nothing," I lied too quickly. Her smile faded just enough to make it feel real. "You look like someone with too much on his mind." I shrugged. "Maybe I am." She didn't press. She just handed me the cup, her fingers brushing mine, warm, deliberate. "We all carry things we don't say," she murmured. There was something about her tone, not pity, not advice. Recognition. I found myself asking before I could stop. "Do you?" She hesitated, her eyes flicking toward the window. "Used to. I'm better at silence now." The answer landed heavier than I expected. There was history in it, not the dramatic kind, but the kind that leaves traces on someone's face, small as fine lines around the mouth. I wondered if she'd been alone a long time. If the calmness I admired was really the shape of loneliness worn smooth over years. I wanted to ask. I didn't. Instead, I said, "You don't seem like someone who likes silence." That made her look at me again, eyes narrowing slightly, not in offense but surprise. "You notice too much," she said quietly. Her voice wasn't distant this time. It was close, too close. She was standing in front of me now, just a few feet away. I could see the faint shimmer of light on her skin, the way her breathing slowed, careful, measured. "I don't mean to," I said. She smiled, a small, tired one. "Then don't apologize for it." For a moment neither of us moved. The clock ticked softly in the background. She reached past me to place her cup on the table, her shoulder brushing against my arm, and the world shrank to that single point of contact, warm, fleeting, impossible to ignore. When she pulled back, her breath brushed my neck, and I heard her whisper something, maybe my name, maybe nothing. Then she stepped away, pretending to busy herself with dishes that didn't need washing. But she didn't look at me again. I stood there, tea cooling in my hand, realizing that silence had never felt louder. It started with a storm. Not the kind that breaks windows, but the quiet kind that turns the world gray and slow. My friend had gone out, said he'd be back before dark. He wasn't. So it was just me and her. Rain pressed against the windows, soft but steady. She was sitting on the couch with a blanket over her legs, a book in hand she wasn't really reading. I stood near the shelves, pretending to look at the framed photographs, her family, old vacations, birthdays long past. I could feel her eyes on me. "You don't have to wait here," she said softly. "I don't mind the rain." She smiled faintly. "You never did, even as a kid. You used to run through it." There was warmth in her voice, memory and affection tangled together. I looked at her then, and for the first time, she didn't look away. The space between us filled with everything we hadn't said yet. I sat down across from her, careful, casual. "You remember that?" "I remember most things," she said. "Even the ones I shouldn't." That silence again. Familiar, electric. I could hear the rain, the tick of the clock, my own heartbeat out of sync. Her book slipped from her hand and landed on the rug. I leaned forward to pick it up at the same time she did. Our hands met, not brushed, not by accident this time. Met. Neither of us moved. Her skin was warm, her fingers trembling just enough for me to notice. "I should," she started. But she didn't finish. Thunder rolled somewhere far off, soft but deep. She didn't pull her hand back. I did. Only because I had to. "This isn't," she whispered, but her voice trailed off, her eyes flicking toward the stairs, the sound of footsteps. Except there were none. Just her pulse in the air. She exhaled slowly, setting the book aside. "If he walked in right now..." I knew who she meant. My friend. Her son. "I know," I said. The weight of those two words hung between us. I knew. And I still couldn't make myself move. She rose from the couch, walked toward the window. The stormlight caught her face, calm, but her jaw was tight, her breath uneven. "People see what they want to see," she murmured. "Do you?" I asked. She turned to me then. That look, half fear, half longing, held me still. She crossed the room slowly, the floor creaking once beneath her steps. She stopped just in front of me, so close I could feel her warmth, the faint scent of jasmine again. This shouldn't, she said, barely above a whisper. I know. But neither of us stepped back. Somewhere, a phone buzzed, sharp, sudden, cutting through the moment. Her eyes broke from mine. The sound came from the kitchen. She turned, took a small breath, and said, I should get that. She moved away, but her hand brushed my arm as she passed, not by mistake this time. Slow, deliberate, like a promise she wasn't ready to make. I watched her go, the air between us still trembling from what almost happened. And for the first time, I realized that stopping had become harder than anything else. It happened 2 nights later, another evening that wasn't supposed to mean anything. I dropped by to return a book. That was the excuse, anyway. Her son wasn't home again. He texted that he was staying out late. I should have turned around. I didn't. She opened the door in soft light, wearing the kind of quiet expression that made you think she already knew what you weren't saying. You're persistent, she said. Just forgetful, I replied. Didn't want to keep your book too long. She took it from my hand, her fingers grazing mine. You didn't finish it. I read enough. Her eyes lingered. Enough to know how it ends? I was hoping you'd tell me. That made her pause, not because of what I said, but how I said it. Something in her shifted. I could see it in the way she looked at me, like she was trying not to. She set the book down on the table, and the air changed, thicker, heavier, as if the house itself knew what we were doing wasn't harmless anymore. Do you know what you're doing? She asked quietly. Do you? That stopped her. For a moment, neither of us breathed. She turned away, running her hand through her hair, trying to shake off whatever was building between us. But it didn't go. I took a step forward. She didn't move. Why do you keep coming here? She asked, her voice low. I don't know. Yes, you do. Her tone wasn't sharp, it trembled, like she was angry at herself, not me. She turned to face me again, eyes glinting under the dim light. You shouldn't look at me that way, she said. I can't help it. The words came out too fast, too honest. And once they were out, there was no taking them back. She exhaled slowly, shaking her head. You're just a boy who doesn't know better. I almost laughed. You don't believe that? Silence. She looked away, but her body betrayed her, the way she pressed her palm against the counter, the way her breath caught when I stepped closer. When I reached out, I didn't even realize I was doing it, just brushed a strand of hair away from her face. She didn't stop me. My hand lingered near her cheek, not touching, just close enough to feel her warmth. This is wrong, she whispered. I know. Her eyes lifted to mine. Then why? I don't know what came over me. Maybe the way she said it, or the way her voice broke just slightly. I stepped closer until her back met the counter. Because you keep looking at me like you want me to stop, I said softly. But you never actually do. She closed her eyes, her breath trembling. My hand rested on the edge of the counter beside hers, not touching, but so close our fingers could have met if either of us moved an inch. Her voice came out barely audible. If we cross this line... I leaned forward, close enough to feel the warmth of her breath against my lips. Then we can't go back. The air between us froze, still, electric, inevitable. And just as she tilted her head, eyes fluttering open, a sharp knock at the door shattered the moment. She flinched. I stepped back, the spell breaking in an instant. Outside, someone called her name. She stared at the door, then at me, her expression caught between panic and longing. Don't, she whispered. Please. But the way she said it, it didn't sound like she meant leave. Part 5. The breaking point. The next day, everything felt off. The sky was bright, too bright, and the air smelled like rain that never came. I told myself I wouldn't go back. I even made it until evening before the pull started again. When I arrived, she was already waiting, not outside, but near the window, curtain half drawn, as if she'd been expecting someone. "You shouldn't be here," she said before I even spoke. "You didn't tell me to stay away." Her lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. There was a quiet tremor in her hands, the first time I'd ever seen her uncertain. "Did he say something?" I asked. Her gaze flicked to me, sharp, startled. "Who?" "Your son." She looked away too quickly. That was the answer. "He heard something," she said finally. "Not everything. Just enough." My chest tightened. Enough to what? Enough to ask questions I couldn't answer. She moved toward the counter, putting space between us. I followed, not close, but close enough that she could feel it. "What did you tell him?" She laughed once softly, without humor. "That you were just a friend." The word just hung in the air like smoke neither of us could breathe through. She turned then, back against the counter, eyes meeting mine. "This has to stop." I didn't argue. I couldn't. But I didn't move either. Her voice faltered. "You think this is simple, some harmless thing that'll fade when you find someone your own age. But it's not." I stepped forward, close enough that I could see the reflection of myself in her eyes. "You think I don't know that?" She swallowed hard, trying to steady her breath. "Then why do you keep coming back?" "Because I tried not to," I said quietly. "And it hurt more." The silence after that was heavy, intimate, the kind that feels like standing on the edge of something too steep. "I ruined things before," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "A marriage, friendships. I don't trust myself anymore." I took another step. "Then trust me." Her hand came up, not to stop me, but to rest against my chest. The contact was feather-light, but it felt like fire. I could feel her pulse through her fingertips, fast, uneven. "Don't say that," she breathed. "I mean it." Her eyes filled with something raw, fear, want, both. She shook her head, but her hand didn't move. "You don't understand what this will do to us," she whispered. "I don't care." "Yes, you do," she said, her voice breaking. "That's what scares me." For a moment, the world narrowed to her hand, her breath, the distance between us shrinking again. She stepped around me suddenly, brushing past, too close, too deliberate. Her shoulder grazed my arm, her scent following after. "I told him you wouldn't come today," she said softly, back still turned. "Then I guess we both lied," I murmured. She froze, half turned toward me, half resisting the pull. Outside, the first drops of rain hit the window. Inside, neither of us moved. And though she didn't look at me again, her voice came out quiet, trembling with something final. "Then we can't pretend anymore." Part 6. What we chose. The rain hadn't stopped. It came down in sheets that blurred the windows, muffling the world outside. Inside, the house felt too still, too aware of us. She stood by the kitchen table, one hand resting against it, the other holding a cup she wasn't drinking from. I was in the doorway, wet from the rain, heart racing from the words that had been circling my head all day. She didn't look surprised to see me. Just tired. The kind of tired that isn't about sleep, but about holding something back for too long. "You shouldn't have come," she said softly. "I know." She set the cup down, her fingers trembling slightly. "Then why did you?" "Because pretending this doesn't matter hurts more than the risk." She exhaled, slow, steady. "You think you're ready for what that means?" "No," I said. "But I'm here anyway." Something in her broke, not visibly, not loud, but in the way her shoulders fell, the way her eyes softened like she'd run out of ways to fight it. She took a step toward me, then another. I didn't move. The space between us vanished until there was nothing left but breath. Her voice came out low, almost shaking. "This is the part where we ruin everything. Or save something we never had," I said. Her hand lifted, hesitant, uncertain, and found my face. The touch was light, tracing the edge of my jaw, pausing at the corner of my mouth. I closed my eyes, and she pulled back just slightly, as if afraid she'd gone too far. "Tell me to stop," she whispered. I didn't. Couldn't. Instead, I reached up, fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face. Her breath caught, her lips parted. Not a word, not yet, just air and warmth and everything we'd been avoiding. "You make me feel," she began, but couldn't finish. "I know," I said. And then the silence stretched, long, fragile, unbearable. I thought she would pull away. But she didn't. She leaned forward until her forehead rested against mine, her breath unsteady, her hands still against my chest. "This isn't a fair fight," she murmured. "I never wanted to win," I said. A quiet laugh escaped her, small, broken, real. She closed her eyes again, and in that tiny, suspended moment, everything made sense. The waiting, the hesitation, the ache that came from wanting something we weren't supposed to want. Then she stepped back. Just one step, but it was enough to break the gravity that had held us together. Her voice was calm now, almost steady. "If we do this, there's no going back. I know. And if we don't, then I'll still think about you." She smiled, faint, sad, beautiful. "You already do." Her hand fell away, and for a long moment, we just stood there, two people caught between what we wanted and what we knew. Outside, thunder rolled again. Inside, the space between us finally filled with clarity, not peace, not relief, but understanding. Whatever we were, whatever we'd become, it couldn't stay hidden anymore. Part 7. The quiet after morning came slow, soft, and pale. The rain had stopped some time before dawn, leaving the world washed clean. I stood outside her door for a long minute before knocking, not sure if I wanted her to answer, not sure what I'd say if she did. She opened it almost at once, like she'd been waiting. Her eyes were tired, but not in the same way as before. There was a quietness to her now, not peace exactly, but a kind of acceptance that comes when you finally stop running from yourself. "Couldn't sleep," I said. "Me either." We both smiled a little, awkward and familiar. She stepped aside, letting me in. The living room smelled faintly of rain and coffee. A blanket was draped over the couch, still warm where she'd been sitting. Neither of us said much at first. The silence between us had changed, not heavy anymore, but tender, cautious, almost fragile. "I kept thinking about what you said," she began. "That we'd ruin everything? That, or save something." Her eyes found mine, steady this time. "I've spent so long telling myself what I can't have, what's too late, too wrong, too complicated. But you," she paused, searching for the right words. "You make me feel like it isn't too late to be seen again." I didn't speak. I just stepped closer until she was within reach. Her breath caught, but she didn't move away. I took her hand, small, soft, trembling just a little, and held it between mine. "You don't have to explain," I said quietly. "I already understand." Her fingers tightened around mine, almost in disbelief. For the first time, she didn't pull away. We stood there, still and close, the morning light spilling across the floor. She looked up at me then, her expression open, unguarded in a way I'd never seen. "This shouldn't make sense," she said softly. "Maybe it doesn't have to." A breath of a laugh escaped her, half a sigh. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against my chest. My hands came up instinctively, one at her back, the other in her hair, and for a long while, either of us said anything. It wasn't a confession, or a promise, or anything grand. Just a quiet moment where the world finally stopped asking us to pretend. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "You should go before he wakes up." "I know. But stay a little longer." So I did. We sat together on the couch, her head against my shoulder, my hand still wrapped around hers. The light grew brighter through the window, catching the silver in her hair, the calm in her face. It wasn't forever, maybe it never could be, but it was real. And for that morning, that was enough. When I finally stood to leave, she looked up at me, her eyes soft, certain. "Take care of yourself," she said. "You too." I hesitated at the door, turned once more. She was still there, watching, smiling faintly. And though nothing was said aloud, I knew we'd both found something neither of us had been looking for, and neither of us could forget.